Good morning, all. Today, we'll be focusing on a topic of history of English literature and language. Our topic is taken from second module's chapter 2. The name of our topic is Expressionism. We can see that the movement modernism was influenced by artistic movements like Expressionism, Impressionism, Imagism, Cubism, Surrealism, Futurism, and Vodism. So now let's see what is Expressionism, how it all started, and what all happened during this movement. And most importantly, the personalities or who were all part of this movement. Moving forward to how it all started. Expressionism first emerged in 1905 when a group of four German architecture students who desired to become painters, and they were Ernst Ludwig Krishna, Fritz Bleyl, Karl Schmidt-Willoff, and Erich Heckel. They formed the group Die Brücke, the bridge, in the city of Dresden. And a few years later, in 1911, a like-minded group of young artists formed Der Blaue Reiter, the Blue Rider, in Munich. Since Expressionism was started in German, it was also called as German Expressionism. German Expressionism is an artistic genre that originated in Europe in the 1920s and is broadly defined as a rejection of Western conventions and the depiction of reality that is widely distorted for emotional effect. These artists wanted to paint about emotion. It could be anger, anxiety, fear, or peacefulness. This wasn't a completely new idea in art. Other artists like Vincent van Gogh had been doing the same thing. However, this was the first time this type of art had been given a name. So, German Expressionism or the German Expressionist artist wanted to paint about an emotion, and it can be anger, anxiety, anything. So, German Expressionism or Expressionism was started by Ernst Ludwig Krishna along with some other painters. Expressionism occurred during the year 1905 to 1925, and Expressionism can be defined as an art movement that came into being when artists became more concerned with expressing their feeling on an occurrence or object than with creating a photorealistic painting. Expressionism occurred mostly in Germany, and sometimes it is called German Expressionism instead. Expressionist artists used exaggerated colors, aggressive brushstrokes, exaggeration, and distortion to paint. Now, father of Expressionism, he was Edward Munch. He was an historic figure in modern art, little known in the US, died in Oslo in his native Norway. He was also the founder of the Expressionist school of painting. Every movement has its own purpose, and in the same way, Expressionism, artistic style in which thus artists seek to depict not objective reality but rather the subjective emotions and responses that objects and events arouse within a person. So the purpose of Expressionism was to bring forth the emotions of a person. And we all know that when a movement arises, it can also affect the socio-political background, and along with it, it can also affect literature, poetry, and all the other sorts of arts. And the same way, Expressionism also affected literature, dance, sculpture, music, and theatre. So, what is Expressionism in literature, or the definition? Expressionism in literature arose as a reaction against materialism, complacent bourgeois prosperity, rapid mechanization and urbanization, and the domination of the family within pre-World War I European society. And Expressionism in literature too had a purpose. Expressionism is a modernist movement initially in poetry and painting, originating in Germany at the beginning of the 20th century. Its typical trait is to present the world solely from a subjective perspective, distorting it radically for emotional effect in order to evoke moods or ideas within a person. Now, some key characteristics of Expressionism. Expressionist art tried to convey emotions and meaning rather than reality. Each artist had their own unique way of expressing their emotions in their art. In order to express emotion, the subjects are often distorted or exaggerated, At the same time, colors are often vivid and shocking. And Expressionism mostly aimed at Expressionist artists wanted to paint very strong emotions. More than real objects as we see them in the world, they wanted to paint wild emotions and the world of dreams. The Expressionists argued that as real life was contradictory, then the arts need to be contradictory to reveal that too. Some key features of Expressionism are this used strong emotional colors and wild brush strokes, and the world of supernatural was a strong influence, and there was an individual alienation from the natural world from the social world, and most importantly the impact of industrial capitalist society on human beings. These are few features of Expressionism. Just as it affected the literature, it has also affected the poetry. And Expressionism, we are now going to discuss about Expressionism in poetry. Now, these are few Expressionist poets: George Ham, Ernst Stadler, August Stram, Gottfried Benn, George Trakl, L. Slasker, Franz Werfel. Expressionism in poetry arose at the same time as its dramatic counterpart, was similarly non-referential and sought an ecstatic, hymn-like lyricism that would have considerable associative power. This condensed, stripped down poetry, utilizing strings of nouns and a few adjectives and infinitive verbs, eliminated narrative and description to get at the essence of feeling. And some poets were pessimistic. They contented themselves with satirizing values, and the dominant theme of Expressionist verse was horror over urban life. Now, outside Germany, playwrights who used Expressionist dramatic techniques included the American authors Eugene O'Neill and Elmer Rice. And moving forward to Expressionism in theatre or drama, we have heard that outside Germany, playwrights use Expressionist dramatic techniques, and in forging a drama of social protest, Expressionist writers aim to convey their ideas through a new style. Their concern was with the general truths rather than particular situations. August Strindberg and Frank Wedekind were notable forerunners of Expressionist drama, but the first full-fledged Expressionist play was Reinhard Johannes Sorge's Der Bettler, The Beggar, which was written in 1912 but not performed until 1917. And these are the names of few other principal playwrights of the movement. Now, how Expressionism was used in theatre. Expressionist plays often dramatize the spiritual awakening and sufferings of the protagonist and are referred to as station dramas, modeled on the episodic presentation of the suffering and death of Jesus in the stations of the cross. Expressionism in other arts, films and music. Films. Strongly influenced by Expressionist stagecraft, the earliest Expressionist films set out to convey through decor the subjective mental state of the protagonist. For example, the most famous film is Robert Wiene's The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, in which a madman relates his understanding of how he came to be in the asylum. The misshapen streets and buildings of the set are projections of his own crazy universe. The film's morbid evocation of horror, menace, and anxiety, and the dramatic, shadowy lighting and bizarre set became a stylistic model for Expressionist films. Moving on to music. What is Expressionism music in 20th century? Expressionism is the term genre used to describe music composed between the abandonment of tonality at the conclusion of the Romantic period and Arnold's creation of 12-tone composition. While some classify the composer Arnold Schoenberg as an expressionist because of his contribution to the Blow-Rated Almanac, musical expressionism seems to have found its most natural outlet in opera. What is the importance of expressionism in music? Expressionist composers poured intense emotional expression into their music and explored the subconscious mind. And most outstanding of the expressionist operas, however, are two by Alban Berg, Vysakhi performed in 1925 and Lulu, which was not performed in its entirety until 1979. Expressionist arts. Expressionism refers to art in which the image of reality is distorted in order to make it expressive of the artist's inner feelings. The Scream by Edward Monk. This painting shows a man standing on a bridge. His hands are on his face and he is screaming. The sky behind him is red and swirling. The picture expresses the emotion of a person alone in their anguish and anxiety. The Large Red Horses by Franz Marc. The Large Red Horses uses color and movement to express the energy and power of nature. Franz Marc often used colors to represent certain emotions. Blue meant spirituality, yellow femininity, and red power and violence. He also painted a lot of pictures of horses and other animals. Next, Lady in a Green Jacket by August Mack. In this painting, a lady is standing in the foreground wearing a green jacket. She's looking sort of down and to the side. There are two couples in the background walking away from her. You get the feeling that maybe she's lonely or has lost someone recently. One of the ladies in the background has turned to look back at her, perhaps feeling sorry for her loss. And these are famous expressionist artists. And now, such as since every movement arises, there can also be a declination of the movement. So, how expressionism movement declined? The decline of expressionism was hastened by the vagueness of his longing for a better world. The partial re-establishment of stability in Germany after 1924 and the growth of more overtly political styles of social realism and hastened the movement's decline in the late 1920s. Many expressionists went into exile in the United States and other countries. And the difference between Impressionism and Expressionism. Impressionism, while the paintings are based on the real world, Impressionists paint the scene as if they had only glanced at it for a moment. Expressionism is directly focused on the emotional response of the artist to the real world using disproportionate sizes, odd angles, and painted in vivid and intense colors. Many expressionist artists also overlap into other movements such as Fauvism, Symbolism, Abstract art, and Surrealism. Hope you all did understood. Thank you.